Hi class, this is Mary Moen, your instructor, and in this screencast I'm going to go over the classroom observation rubric that your clinical educator and I will use when we evaluate the lesson that we observe. So you can see at the top of the rubric there's just some demographic information that I would fill in here, and then I'm going to describe how I use it, and then we'll go over the categories. So the way I use it is actually during the lesson that I observe, I handwrite or type in a computer notes of what I see. And then I come back to this rubric and I go through the categories, and looking at my notes, I try to assess where candidates fall in each of the categories. So let's take this first one as an example, creating an environment of respect and rapport. You'll see that there's 4 levels of competency. Does not meet is 1, approach is 2, meets 3, above is 4. So what I do is I read through, I usually start at meets, I read through what this rubric, how this rubric describes what meeting the competency level is of creating an environment of respect and rapport. And I'll look at my notes, and then if I say, okay, in this class there was like generally caring and respect, so I might do this, and then I usually go up and highlight that. Then if I see something else like I don't know, the teachers respects and encourages student efforts, I might highlight that. I mean, not everything will be highlighted. I'll be picking and choosing, but I mean, there could be something even over here. The teacher attempts to respond to disrespectful behavior with uneven results. So technically, your rubric your performance could kind of hit more than one competency level, because it's just hard to be perfect. And so that's what I do. And I'll put some comments for what I saw and why and how you can improve. So just to be clear though, at the end of student teaching, our goal is that you meet each of these categories. You meet the standard, you're competent in them. If you hit above, that's wonderful. If there's a few things in approaches, you just have to realize that that's something that you might want some professional development on, or reflect on, or somehow strengthen. But our goal is meets 3. Another thing I want to say about this rubric is that these categories that I'm going to go over next are categories that come from a scholar. Her name is Charlotte Danielson. She's done a lot of work on evaluating teachers and what professional standards should look like. And actually, this classroom observation rubric that I'm using in this class is the exact same observation rubric that the Rhode Island Department of Ed uses and most of the districts actually use it to evaluate their teachers and school librarians. So the good news is that those of you in Rhode Island, you are going to have some experience being evaluated using the likely rubric that you'll be evaluated on next year when you have a job, so you'll be familiar with it. For those of you who aren't going to be teaching in Rhode Island, as I mentioned, it's based on Charlotte Danielson's work, and I'll have to say that Charlotte Danielson's model for a rubric is used by many states and districts, and you'll be familiar with the same kind of standards and the expectations no matter where you are. All right, so here was creating an environment of respect and rapport. I'll kind of go through and give you some things that I look for as well. In creating an environment of respect and rapport, being happy to see your students come in, saying nice to see you, and being warm and caring. Those are being polite, respectful. Those are things that I'm looking for. Establishing a culture of learning. If you go to meets, the classroom culture is a place where learning is valued by all. High expectations for both learning and hard work are the norm for most students. This is something, one thing that you can do is you can encourage them to be learners. Like, I really want to hear what you have to say about this. I want to tell me what you learned. A lot of times in school library, they're like, oh, this isn't graded. Don't worry. It doesn't count for anything. I mean, that's not establishing a culture of learning. I want you to really encourage them to be curious and that you're interested in what they learned and that they can share it. I'd also like for you to present your activities that they do as learning opportunities, not just, okay, we have one activity we have to get done before the end of the class. Build this culture of learning, that they're here to learn, not just to get something done. So that's my comments on that category. Managing classroom procedures is the third category on the rubric. And you just have, you might have like clapping routines or some transition routines, or you have things, other processes, so that kids know what they're doing and your instructional time is maximized. Managing student behavior. This kind of ties a lot. If you have a lot of good routines already established in your classroom, in your library, then students will behave better. I do want to say something quickly about the managing classroom procedures. Model what your clinical educator uses, and also find out what the classroom teachers are using when they want kids to transition or clean up or get their attention. That's going to be key to helping with your success. So back to student behavior. If you have a lot of routines set, then behavior is usually more appropriate. But you can read through the descriptions for meets and above to find out how you can help manage their behavior. I also want to say that if you'll notice at the end of each category, there's a comment section where I'll write what I saw and any suggestions to improve. And sometimes I might even have questions for you, like, what did you think of this? So it's all a reflective learning opportunity. So the fifth one is communicating with students. So you say the purpose of the lesson, the student learning objectives, you use clear instructions, you connect the students' knowledge with what they're learning, you can explain the content well. And this bottom one here, your use of academic vocabulary is precise and serves to extend student understanding. I'm going to be looking for this. So you're going to want to say, we're going to use evaluation criteria, not we're going to use 5 things or 5 words to evaluate a website. Use the vocabulary of our profession, intellectual property, plagiarism, whatever, fair use. I'll be looking for those kinds of things. All right. Number 6, using questioning prompts and discussion techniques. So let's look at meets. Basically think of Bloom's taxonomy. So you know how the lower level question stems are like to assess for comprehension and knowledge, and the upper ones assess for like critical thinking skill, higher level thinking skills, where they evaluate and they create, synthesize. So you're going to want to make sure you have a range of questions. And, even kindergarten kids can answer higher level thinking questions. They can predict, they can, compare and contrast. So I'll be looking for the types of questions that you ask here. I do like this one. The teacher challenges students to justify their thinking and engage them in discussion. A lot of times I'll see discussion where the kids answer something and the teacher will just say, great, or whatever, without really responding to what they say and even think further and justify their thinking. So that's something you can work on. Here is engaging students in learning. And actually, I think this ties with the questioning prompts, because if you're asking questions and engaging them in discussion, you're also engaging them in learning. I'll also be looking for interactive, student-centered learning activities that you learned about in 527 in this one. The last one, using assessment and instruction. Okay, so if you're going to be doing the focus on assessment assignment, and so you'll be covering this, and hopefully assessment, whether it's just formative or getting student or giving feedback to students or getting students to self-assess some of their work, kind of becomes more natural for you. So you can read if you read the descriptions for meets and above, you'll see that if you do the focus on assessment assignment, you're going to be hitting this one. So there's that. And then I might, go over this. Well, I will go over this at our conference, and I'll put any additional notes. So that's an overview of the classroom observation rubric that your clinical educator and I will be using. And I've also given you some tips on things that I'm going to be looking for. So thank you for watching.